Well, welcome back, everyone, to our daily devotions. We're so glad that you're with us. We've titled today's devotion actually with a question, and it's this: do you owe someone an apology? Good question to ask. Now, let me frame it this way, and this is very relevant for me. My son, Ben, in his first grade class right now, is learning the functions of punctuation. And with the blended learning approach that we're taking, meaning that he goes into school a couple days and he's home a couple days, some of the learning requirements fall on the parents to either share some of the new concepts or reinforce the ones that they're teaching at school. And so we've been doing that this past week with punctuation. Now, one of those punctuation marks that we've been studying is the question mark. And so we've taken different words and we've shown Ben that these are words that when you see this word, when you see a sentence start with this word, most likely it's a question that it is. And we've explained that asking questions in general is a necessary part and a regular part, really, of learning. And so he's grabbing onto that concept. Now, asking questions, the right questions, is also a vital part of having healthy relationships as well. It's going to be very hard for you and I to have healthy connections with people if we're not asking, the questions that we need to be asking. Now, one of those questions is what I believe is a very unpopular one, and you probably guessed it. It's the title of this devotion. Do I owe someone an apology? That's not a very popular question to ask. Maybe the question people ask today in our society is what can I get out of that person? How can they make my life better? And that's the manipulative way of our culture. I guess that's the fleshly, fallen reality of our depraved world. But a really good question to ask, and only mature people, I think, could do this. Immature people don't do this. But it's this: do I owe someone an apology? See, let's face it. A majority of us always think we're right. Like we think we do nothing wrong. Just the other day, I was talking to a person, and they basically were justifying every unkind action they were doing. And it was towards another family member. And I just listened and listened and listened. And I was just waiting to get a word in. And not one time, though, did I hear this person say, maybe I should talk with them and see if there's something I did to bring about the way that they've been acting. Instead, they just kept going on the offense of, I did this, and this person's that, and this person's this. Nothing healthy out of it. And so, perhaps maybe considering the other person's feelings and maybe why they're acting like this, and again, asking that question, do I owe someone an apology? See, some of the most powerful words that you could say in a relationship is this: am I wrong? That's a question. And then followed up by this: please forgive me. Those are powerful words to say. And you will notice that relationships usually get stronger when people are willing to be sincere about their shortcomings, if they've dropped the ball in an area. Now, it doesn't only affect your relationship with other people when you're not willing to apologize and owe up to something. We find out that it also gets in the way of your worship with God. Look what it says here in Matthew chapter 5, verses 23 to 24. It's here that we're told to be conscious, basically, of other people's hurts that we may have caused, because it does get in the way of you and I honoring God and seeing any type of healing in a relationship. Look what it says here in Matthew 5, 23 to 24. It says this: so if you are presenting a sacrifice at the altar in the temple, and you suddenly remember that someone has something against you, notice this: leave your sacrifice there at the altar. Go and be reconciled to that person. Then come and offer your sacrifice to God. Now think about that for a second. What is that implying? That our worship with God can be impeded if we have some unresolved conflict with somebody else. Here you might be thinking, man, I'm trying to get close to God and I can't. And little did you know, you're walking around with maybe a lot of anger, or maybe there's offenses that you need to clean up. Maybe a little bit of both. And a lot of times we think, I just got to fast. I just got to read. I got to live in church. I got to go to every church service they offer. I got to go to every prayer meeting. And listen, come as much as you want. You should be coming regularly anyway. But you could live it. You could set up your residence here. That's not going to fix your connection problem with God. Most of the time, there are people drama issues or unresolved issues in our heart. maybe an attitude problem we have that we need to get right, that again is getting in the way. It's blocking the connection, the vibrant connection that God desires to have with us. You might say, man, how does he know that so well? Well, been there, I mean, who is it? Who hasn't been there? Who hasn't had something going on, beef with somebody else? Maybe they themselves have been offended, or I've caused the offense. I can only speak for myself, actually, in this area. I've caused an offense, and I haven't cleaned it up yet. Guess what? God don't want to hear from me. Because you know what? Then it's nothing more. I'm just going through the motions at that point. I've said this many times before. Spiritual maturity shows up in relationships. And your worship could be either elevated or seriously diminished when it comes to you and I not owing up to the offenses that we've caused. Or maybe if we're responding to somebody who's hurt us in an unjust manner. We must pay attention to that. And we got to have this mindset of humility. We don't want to be proud. We don't want to have an unapologetic attitude. That's not God's best for us. So look what the scripture says. Leave it at the altar. In other words, God deems you getting right with somebody else more important than you going through the motions of a church service, because the temple was their equivalency of a church. Let me say that again. God doesn't need anybody, say it another way, God doesn't need anybody to go through all the religious steps and fulfill the religious obligations, yet stink at relationships. He would rather you get that, at least try to get that right. Now, somebody has to receive it. We understand that. Sometimes people might just slam the door in your face, but you will feel a lot better when you clear the slate. If you're walking around knowing that you have done something to somebody and you haven't cleaned it up, it could have been your attitude, could have been your posture, could have been how you treated somebody, or all of the above. If you don't deal with that and you know that's there, guess who else knows that's there? God. And that is just going to get in the way. And so God instructs the worshiper literally to stop in their tracks and go and repair the relationship. Because guess what? God doesn't compartmentalize our relational conflicts and our spiritual commitments. He doesn't go, okay, here's your spiritual commitments over here. Here's your relational catastrophes that you've caused over here. Okay, no, God looks at everything together. And I think, one of the reasons why churches sometimes become clubs for a bunch of critics and phonies is because they compartmentalize the conflict and the commitments. You can't do it. They're all in the same bucket. We got to get it right. And so with this in mind, let us humbly, prayerfully seek guidance and leading in that we could render an apology when it's appropriate. The overall health of our relationships with each other and our relationships with God depend on it. And so ask yourself that question routinely, regularly. Do I owe someone an apology? And maybe follow it up with, Lord, show me what I need to do. Well, guess what? God will never tell you, you know what? Forget their feelings. You know what? Do what's comfortable for you. God's going to tell you to take the road that he calls you to take, which is one of honesty, which is one of humility. And Lord willing, that will lead to healing. May God bless you, and may he give you the strength you need to ask the question that needs to be asked. Do I owe someone an apology? God bless you.